So, lads, the Fever suck. The Fever really suck. And people are already trying to predict who they're going to get in the draft, assuming that if they're the worst team, they're going to get the number one overall pick. When that doesn't necessarily happen, there is still a lottery. But people are fantasy booking Paige Beuckers onto this team and about how she is an unbelievable fit with Clarke. And I'm going to be talking in this video about whether or not I think that is realistic or whether or not they're a good fit to play with each other. Before we get on, if you guys are new to the channel, subscribe. We're trying to hit 5,000 subscribers as soon as possible. But anyway, now let's get on to the video. So Clarke and Paige Beuckers have been two of the most hyped players. They were both in the same freshman class, and while Paige Beuckers won National Player of the Year, there was actually co-freshman of the year with Clarke and Paige Beuckers. These two have been unbelievable there for years. They've been teammates on Team USA, and they were considered probably the two of the best players in college basketball last year. I think if Paige Beuckers had gone for the WNBA, she probably goes... Does she go 3? She might go 3 to Chicago. I think she probably does go 3 to Chicago, honestly. I don't think she goes to the Sparks. I still think Cameron Brink maybe goes number 2, but like she goes either 2 or 3. She doesn't go number 1. Whereas she's probably going to go number 1 in this year's draft. And a lot of people are talking about how she's the perfect teammate to put beside Clarke, that she'll handle the ball, she'll be a secondary playmaker. Whenever she'll take the pressure off Clarke, she plays defense, she'll score, she'll probably come in and score 15 a game, she'll shoot, she'll play make, she'll do absolutely everything because she is just a baller. And I actually think you can legitimately argue. I even said it last year. I was even saying when people were talking to me about the tournament that it's not crazy. And if you look at my early videos talking about the Clarke situation with Taurasi and Sue, they were saying it's not actually crazy to think Paige Beuckers is better than Clarke. It's not, and it wasn't even at the time. It's just that Clarke was the system, and the system of Clarke is a much better system than Paige Beuckers. But Paige Beuckers can fit in a bit better, and I don't think it's crazy to argue that Paige is better than Caitlin, especially if she has another healthy year after the ACL injury. But at the same time, you do have to take into account what team they play for, or what team Clarke plays for. She plays for the incompetent Indiana Fever. It is the worst constructed roster I've seen in a long time. And it is the tankathon. And people are like, oh, if they go back to back to back number 1 overall picks, that's what the Aces did. Well, yes, the Aces did that. But the Aces didn't have the number 2 pick right before they had back to back to back number 1s. And then another 2 pick in Kelsey Mitchell. And the year before they had another high pick where they took Lexi Hull. And they've just got a bunch of high draft picks that are all can't play together. Nalissa Smith the year before, Aliyah Boston. But Kelsey Mitchell is 50 and 170 since she was drafted. I'm not joking. I think it's something like that, 50 and 170 for a record. If you want to look at if you think the Kings in the NBA were incompetent, you've seen nothing on the Fever. And they gave Erica Wheeler the highest contract in the WNBA, coming off a season averaging 9 points a game. They're terrible. They're incompetent. Regardless of Christie's sides, it doesn't matter. You could give them Paige Beuckers. You could let Juju Watkins come out early the next year and give them 5 number 1 overall picks in a row, and they're still not going to be good. You could put Aja Wilson on the Fever, and they're still going to suck. I'll stand by that one. They're incompetent as a franchise. There is bad decision after bad decision after bad decision for years. You could put Sabrina Ionescu on the Fever, and Kirstie Wallace is still going to start. You could put in, you could give them, if you swapped organizations and put the New York Liberty roster on the Fever, I still think they're a sub 500 team. Because there's a lot to be said with just incompetent franchises. And in all sports, where just players underperform. And I know, I'll use soccer as an example, the Scum, Manchester United, as they're known as to other people, to some people, but that is an incompetent team. No matter what happens, a world superstars can go there and look terrible. You can put together a team of world superstars, but as soon as they put on that red jersey, they're terrible. And that's almost like it's going to be with the Fever. They are incompetent. Their GM's terrible. Their roster construction is terrible. Their coach is terrible. So when you add all of that, they're going to struggle. And the team doesn't fit. Like, adding Paige Beuckers doesn't solve the rebounding problem. It doesn't solve the fact that you're trying to fit square pegs in round holes. It doesn't solve the fact that you've got like a bunch of really, really good pieces, but they just don't fit together. Like, they've got no glue guys. They've got no role players. They've got no dogs. They've got no shooters. They've got no defenders. Like, that doesn't get fixed by getting another number 1 overall pick. It actually doesn't. It needs a complete teardown. Like, that team needs a teardown. And if you are Indiana, it's not a crazy thing to say go and trade Caitlin Clarke. Because very clearly, the players around Caitlin Clarke don't fit the Caitlin Clarke system. And when Caitlin Clarke isn't playing the Caitlin Clarke system, Caitlin Clarke sucks. No, it doesn't suck, but it's just an average WNBA player. She is a non-defender. She's a non-defensive player whose only asset is catch and shoot threes when she's not playing the Caitlin Clarke system. And when Caitlin Clarke's playing the Caitlin Clarke system, I'm convinced if you surrounded Caitlin Clarke with a bunch of runners that play defense, like just a juiced up version of what she had in Iowa, just a bunch of players that do the same thing but way better, I think they're a playoff team in the WNBA. They're not the best team in the WNBA by any means. They're a playoff team though. And look, Paige Beuckers is somebody that should fit. She should fit beside Caitlin Clarke. But like, she goes to Indiana and they tell her, you know what, you're taking long twos and you're coming off the bench. Or then maybe they go, you know what, the hype for Caitlin Clarke's going to go down, is gone. So we're going to run through Paige, and Caitlin, you're standing in the corner. I would see it could fit with a competent coach. If the two of them, if Becky Hammond decides, you know what, I'm taking over this job. If Dawn Staley just goes into the WNBA. Heck, if Lisa Bluter, she's not going to, just randomly comes out of retirement and decides, you know what, I can't stand this, I'm taking over. Then maybe, just maybe then, it could work out. But I don't know why there's any point in fantasy booking Paige Beuckers to the Indiana Fever, because we've seen what it's done to Caitlin Clarke. The Caitlin Clarke hype is going to end very soon. It really is. And it'll come back. Maybe next year, maybe the year after, when teams calm down on the double and triple teams. They don't really care as much about proving to everybody that Caitlin Clarke's not her and beating down on her as much as anything. Caitlin Clarke's going to have some 30, 40-point games. She's going to be a really good WNBA player. She's going to be an unbelievable WNBA player. But once that initial hype dies down, maybe they're saying, you know what, we're done with this. Let's run through Paige. Paige is going to be the hype, and they're going to ruin her as well. They're going to ruin her. I'm not joking. If Paige Beuckers goes to the Indiana Fever, she will be ruined quicker than Caitlin Clarke, because at least Caitlin Clarke can shoot from 40 feet out. That's the only time she can get open, is from 30 feet on layups. And the only reason she gets layups is because sometimes teams overplay her at 30 feet. Paige Beuckers is unbelievable. Paige Beuckers and Caitlin Clarke would be a perfect combination on any team other than this. It's not going to save the Indiana Fever. Trust me on that. Because this franchise is incompetent and there's no amount of talent that can save an incompetent franchise.